This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration. This podcast is sponsored by Lever Consulting, editing with a purpose. Check them out at leverconsulting.com for a free consultation.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Welcome to How's That Working For You Season 2. It's your girls Kat and V, but this time we're taking deeper dives into mental health and breaking stigmas. So get ready because things are about to get real and personal. How's That Working For You is a passion project created with the intention of creating space and awareness around mental health topics that are often hard to talk about. We are not professionals in the field of mental health, but we speak from our own personal experience and thoroughly conduct our own research to help educate others on why it's important to join this conversation.
Hey Kat, what's up?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about accommodations. Yeah. So that, like, accommodations for you and I think you maybe had them a little bit earlier than me, but I didn't ask for accommodations until college. I'm not sure. I don't know your story, so maybe you'll add to it when the time's right in this episode. But for me, it wasn't until college when I found out that I could have accommodations. Or as a kid, maybe I did have accommodations and I don't quite remember. But I was thinking about kind of structuring this episode in what you can do as a parent with kids that need accommodations, and then move into college and what resources you have in college, and then the lovely ADA Act. It's I forgot. I'll figure it out when we get there. Anyway, but that made it legally obliging for just work environments and colleges to give people with disabilities accommodations and non-discrimination. Let's start with children, right? So let's start with the statistics. About 17.1 million children are dealing with the effects of mental health issues. And if you break that down, that's about 22 out of every 100 children are facing. Yeah, that's so many kids, right? And you don't really think about that, especially, I don't know, I think it's more prevalent now since parents are being more educated about it, but it's so important to start young. Because if there's a lot of things when you're developing from a young age, it's really important to pay attention to how your kid develops, because it could really affect their future and their thought processes moving forward. There's even bullying that can happen. There's so many things that go into making sure that a kid that has a mental disability is able to thrive in a learning environment. So what I found through research is that there's two different types of plans that are most prominent in terms of being able to find help for your kid. And one is the IEP, which is the Individual Education Plan. And this one, it requires, it doesn't require, but it makes sure that kids will have accommodations in place, kids who struggle with testing and different stimuli, like kids with autism, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, that type of specific learning disability like V and I have, we have very different ones, but that type of thing. The IEP makes sure that your child has the access to that type of help. And then the second one is the 504 plan, which is very similar, but it's part of the Rehabilitation Act. And it does, it makes sure that your kids have the same accommodations for that. And these accommodations include extended time for exams, having testing in a completely different room, actually, now thinking back, I think as a kid, I did get that too. So maybe I did get help as a kid. I was diagnosed with ADHD really young. Daily check-ins and definitely like you can have your kids sit in a place that isn't as distracting, especially if they're distractible. Like if they have ADHD, you can prioritize seating arrangements for your kids. And all of these things are so helpful in terms of making sure that your kid gets the best out of their education from a very young age. And there really shouldn't be any like shame or any type of hesitation in terms of making sure that your kid gets help. And of course, before this is like getting your kid evaluated in psychiatry.
Professionally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't just like go up to the school and be like, "Excuse me, I need this." They have to have documented proof that your kid needs these type of accommodations.
Yeah, because you might not know what they are, even as a parent.
Yeah. So, and like a lot of the times, actually, in the case of me, my teachers actually came to my parents and told me that I was having learning issues. And that was the case. So in any case, like, I think that it's going to be clear, especially in this day and age, that if your kid has a problem, the teacher or somebody in the faculty will point that out if you haven't noticed it yourself. And I'll link this in our on our website, and it's called, this is like from the Better You blog. And yeah, that's for children. I'm not really there yet in terms of having to deal with children, so this was kind of like the one where I had no idea what I was talking about before like telling you guys. So definitely check out the resource, because I'm definitely not the one to ask when it comes to having children. So I think this is the one that I definitely dealt with the most recently, at least, was college accommodations for people with psychiatric disabilities. And I think you and I also have experience with that. And I really wanted to find every school. I want to preface this with, it's like every school is going to have a slightly different route to getting your or I guess like if you're finding your own help, like every college is going to be a little different. So it's really important to think about what college you want to go to. And this resource from bestcolleges.com talks about how important it is to really think about what the right school is. And people don't really think about that. Like some people end up going to the school and realizing that it's not for them. So for example, so some people who have mental illness stay close to home, like me, and that was helpful because I was definitely having a lot of erratic ups and downs, and being home gave me that space and safety net, so I didn't have to like move all the way across the country or something and then move back. So school size is like also another really important factor, because like some schools that are smaller have a little bit more, they can give a little more attention to their students and have a stronger sense of community, I suppose. I mean, you and I kind of have a weird relationship with Dominicans, so
Uncomfortable relationship with our college.
Yeah, so I mean, you really have to think about like where the school is, what the demographics going to be. Just so larger colleges will definitely, they won't have as much like one-on-one attention with their students, but they will have more resources because they have a little more funding. Like the state schools will have more funding and resources for you to find help. And that could be more for the accommodations part and not as much for the hand-holding. So it depends on really what your needs are.
Like think about these things when you're picking what university you want to go to.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of just got thrown into Dominican because
I did too.
But, you know, we made it out alive. But since I'm reading about this now, it didn't even occur to me that would be an option. So if you're like you're in high school and you're looking at colleges, really think about that, because it definitely does matter. And just a fun, I forgot to preface with a statistic. 1 in 5 adults experience mental illness each year. That's the one that's on this page.
I feel like we keep bringing that stat up. It's usually between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 if we're talking about worldwide or the US wide.
Yeah.
It's like so many people struggle with stuff. It's so common. It doesn't make you weird.
It definitely doesn't. And 30, according to Active Minds, like this is, I'll link all the resources, but on this page, it's according to Active Minds, 39% of college students experience significant mental health issues. 39%. That's more than a third of
more than a third. I'm sorry.
What?
I don't know, just the way you said it.
I don't know. That's more than a third of a college campus. Think about it. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because, like, you don't really think about that. And it's so interesting because a lot of people are so, like, especially colleges, they're so hush-hush. They're like, you can just go up to your professor after class if you don't want people to know that you, like, need disability accommodations. It's, like, so hush-hush. And, like, it was just, like, I don't know. It made me feel ashamed almost to have disability accommodations, right?
Like you had to keep it a secret.
Yeah, and that was just not cool. And then another survey revealed that 41% of college students struggle with anxiety, and 36 of them had depression. So that's a lot of people. Just like, I don't know. It's just the way that, especially when we were at Dominican, like our generation, they made it seem like it was such a bad thing to be depressed and to deal with anxiety.
Shame on you for feeling anything but joy and excitement to life.
It was just like so many people had to hide this, and I feel like it shouldn't be an issue. Like if somebody needs a note taker, let them have a note taker. Like why is that? I don't know. But like I said, if you really are uncomfortable with divulging the fact that you have a disability to the entire class, you have the option to do it discreetly and just talk to your professor that way. Again, I guess I'll go through the process of getting accommodations for colleges. You have to have documentation. And there's
just like the younger kids one.
But since you're an adult at this point, you have the responsibility, or if your parents are there for you. But like know that you need these papers in order to get accommodations. And there's usually an office that will be labeled like disability accommodations. I spent a lot of time in that office. And I also just side note, for me, I really found little nooks in the school where I was comfortable doing homework, where it just I was kind of hiding from the rest of the people, you know? If that's how you thrive in terms of being able to do homework and not getting distracted, there's also lots of different places on campuses where you can do your homework and not be distracted that way. It just made me think about that when I said that I spent a lot of time in the disabilities office. I had a lot of problems, okay?
Nobody's judging you. Nobody should be, at least.
So some of these accommodations are priority class registration, which is super cool. That's really good. I didn't get that, but some schools may have that. But how cool would it be to be able to pick your classes first? Anyway, reduce your course load. Oh wow, that's a big one. I don't know if like I said, all of these accommodations are vary from school to school. So when I say these, doesn't mean that you're every school is going to be able to have them. But they'll have tutors. I think tutors,
note takers and extended deadlines are the standard ones that most schools have.
Oh, and then taking a class, taking your test in a different room. That was one that really helped for me. And extended test taking time, because I took my brain works in circles. So it takes a little bit longer for me to finish exams and stuff like that. And I'm sure somebody with dyslexia also needs a little extra time to read the problems to get it done and stuff like that too. So those were really helpful. And there's also noise machines. So if like little noises annoy you and like they distract you, they'll have like a little thing that goes like shh, and it'll block
a white noise machine.
Yeah. So it'll block out all that noise for you too. Now I'm just like, because this was such a prevalent thing in my college experience, I can talk about it through experience, like what that was. Do you want to talk about your experience in college too?
Well, I had a really strained relationship with getting accommodations. Mm-hmm. So much like you, I got not singled out, but schools noticed that I was struggling. I repeated the first grade for crying out loud, which, let me tell you, it put me in a similar grade as my little brother. There's nothing more embarrassing than being like 3 years older than everybody in your class. And so I was really ashamed of being dumb, so I overcompensated by overstudying, which made me seem like I was hyper smart, which also wasn't quite the case. And so through elementary, middle, and high school, I was given accommodations because the teachers were like, this kid is struggling. Like, she might be pulling in really good grades, but she's very obviously visually struggling. So the teachers, for all but I think 4 or 5 of my grades or classes, like gave it to me without me needing to have the parent sign me up. So once I hit college, and I no longer had teachers bending over backwards for me, it was a harsh shock. Because, like, I knew that I wasn't, I'm not going to say smarter or, like, as smart, but I knew I wasn't at the level that I thought that I was when I got into college, because I was, I think, 3rd in line for valedictorian at my high school. I got a 4.2 GPA average when I graduated high school. So I knew that on some level I was kind of smart, but I also knew that there was this horrible secret that I'm awful at reading that I was keeping. And so when I first hit college, I did so awful and I was so embarrassed, but I didn't want to go through the process of getting accommodations. So I found these wacky ass, weird ass coping mechanisms that took me probably 20 times longer than any of my peers and at least 2 times longer than anything needed to be, because I was very much ashamed of being learning disabled, because dyslexia is a learning disability.
Yeah.
And disabled was still a bad word in my brain because of all the weird connotations I had with my physical disabilities. I didn't want to be physically disabled and learning disabled at the same time. That was just too much unableist for me. It wasn't until I got out of college I was like, that was fucking dumb. I could have got a lot of help and done so much better.
But you did get out really fast, though. You did. I mean, like, don't discredit yourself. Like, you're. Like,
I mean, like, when I say, like, I jumped through hoops, I mean, I hurdled through hoops. I started studying for final exams 3 weeks into school, so that way there'd be no hope of me being nervous. Because the knowledge was so ingrained in me that even if I like was freaking out, I would still know the answers to tests. So I didn't have to have anxiety or anything. But that's stupid, because nobody should expect you to know the final exams 3 weeks into a class. But that's what I had to do. And I flunked almost all written portions on any test. And it was something that I pre-planned for when I was trying to figure out what grade I needed to get in one class. I knew like I wasn't going to ace all my classes in college.
So you didn't do any disability accommodations?
Yeah. And it made school so much harder for me and so much more of an unpleasant experience.
Wow. Okay.
It was awful. Like, it was so awful. And there was no reason for it.
I want to talk to you because I do know someone in my master's program is dyslexic, my bad. And she is one of, like, also very inspiring to me, because dyslexia is a very difficult, like, it's a whole different disability than ADHD. And it, like, I cannot imagine not being able to read letters and numbers. And I watched this girl, like, so she was able to get accommodations, like, it was, what was it? It was like, so you got, she would get the PowerPoints early, and then she would also have this program that I also got, but I didn't, like, for me, it wasn't as useful. But it was like this program that would record the class, but also, like, type it out for you, like the lecture.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I watched, like, she utilized these accommodations, like, to a T, and I was just like, she's so smart. Like, she really took whatever, like, resources she had, and she was like, and she did, like, so well on all of her projects. And I was just like, I'm so sorry, because I thought that that's what you did.
Nope. I struggled, and I regret it. I really regret being so stubborn as to not get the help that I needed.
But you made it out.
Well, I made it out, but it was... My mental health was so bad in college because I was constantly overly stressed.
Yeah.
And I got really bad grades and stuff that there's no reason I should have got really bad grades in, simply because I expected myself to be able to write and read at the pace that my body will not let me write and read at. And it's dumb. It's dumb to be like me. Use me as a learning lesson. Anybody listening, don't ever be ashamed of asking for help, no matter what it is that you need. Because you don't need to suffer over something dumb like that. It doesn't make you any less smart. If I wasn't smart, there's no way I could have pulled off what I did. But there's no reason I should have struggled that hard. There's no reason.
I mean, that's like, I'm glad that we had different experiences so that people could hear. I mean, I'm not glad that you had to suffer, but I'm glad that
I made myself suffer.
I'm glad that we had different experience so that people could hear what it was like to not have accommodations. Because I, for some reason, thought that you had accommodations and you didn't. Like,
nope. I should have.
I can't imagine. Like, I feel like dyslexia deserves all the accommodations, almost more than ADHD people do. Because, like, I can't imagine not being able to read letters and numbers. Like, oh my God. Like,
no, and it's a sliding scale. Like, if I am well slept, well fed, I have a lot of water in me, then I can usually read fine. But as soon as I start getting stressed or tired, or if I'm too hungry, it gets harder and harder for me to, like, I'll look at a letter, but my brain won't register what the letter is. It'll just be like, it's in this shape, and this shape means it's either an A, an O, or an E. Which is not necessarily the most helpful thing, because if you change, like, an O or an E, it can be a completely different word.
Or just not a word.
Oh, yeah, or just not a word. And so then having to figure out letter by letter, word by word, slows you to a grinding halt. And sometimes, if I'm too stressed or too whatever, I just straight up will look and be like, that's a pretty shape, but I can't tell you what that shape actually means.
Wow. See,
and I'm almost 30.
You're this, well, you're not almost 30. You're like,
I feel like it.
You're 25. You're like still, you're not almost 30.
I might
almost
be
30.
26. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Like, stop. Anyway, you're not almost 30. She's over exaggerating, guys. But it's interesting because you're the first person to really, like, with dyslexia, to explain to me what dyslexia is like, and I can actually envision it, but I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with it. Because it's like, oh my God, to not be literate, like, there are moments, and I've seen it, there are moments where you're so stressed out that you just can't, and it's just...
Like, my name might not come out correctly. I might not be able to spell my name to you. So if I'm, like, in the middle of taking the test, and I'm stressed out because I don't know the answer to a question, I'm screwed. The rest of the test is...
And you didn't even have, like, extended times? Oh my God. Girl!
Yeah, no. When I tell you that I was struggling, I mean I was struggling because I knew that any material that was going to be on a test, I had to know front, back, and forward, as if I was getting tested for the bar exam every single test.
Why didn't you interrupt me when I was saying that you had disability?
Well, I mean, I do have a learning disability.
I meant accommodations. You know what I meant?
Well, I mean, I did find like good coping mechanisms, but that's no replacement. And there's no reason that I should have struggled and suffered, and my grades would have been so much better if I had taken the help that was actually there for me that I refused to take for whatever dumb reason. Yeah, whatever prideful reason that my stubborn self like locked myself into.
I mean, yeah, I told you guys about my my other friend with dyslexia, and it's just like kind of two of the same. Like you can see where both of them end up, you know, but you still made it out.
Yeah,
you still made
it. Not for a lack of trying.
It just would have been easier for you, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like what I have for the college experience. So for the adulting experience of people who have psychiatric disabilities. So I mentioned the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which I for some reason couldn't remember for the life of me at the beginning of this episode. That is the reason why nobody can discriminate anybody with disabilities, whether they be mental or physical disabilities. So, and that is why companies and employers are legally binded to be having to accommodate for people who ask for accommodations, who need them. So again, very similar to college, and I don't know, it's just like it's the same because you grow up with these disabilities and you need the same accommodations. So it's like flexible workplace, scheduling, so you can schedule priority hours, which is like, for me, I think that it would manifest as making sure that I have a schedule that's like not in the dead of night, or one that's like regular, because I mentioned before, somebody with bipolar disorder needs a regular sleep schedule. So that would manifest in that way. And then like, so you can have absences, excused absences, breaks. Some modifications would be like reduction or removal of distractions in the work area, which is very similar to what they would do in college and as a kid. So there would be dividers for your office to make sure that you're not distracted. Again, there's also like you can be placed away from noisy machinery, all this type of stuff. Equipment, like some people, like again with the white noise machines, they mentioned that here too. I'll be linking this in the website. Like it's all the same, because when you grow up with a disability, chances are it's not gonna go away.
You're not gonna get cured.
Yeah, like you're just not gonna get cured. So it's just like it's all the same things, and rightfully so. Like just because you grow up, there's that thing where it's like people grow out of these things, or like you're an adult, you don't need help. Bullshit, because it's okay to need help. There's nothing wrong with it. What I actually really liked about this source is that it mentions that that management and supervision is a huge thing in this too. And I've definitely seen this in the tech community, the tech industry. My boyfriend works for a tech company. I've seen different tech companies, like they because we're run mostly by millennials, they really prioritize mental health. It's huge. So things like positive reinforcement, flexible scheduling, prioritizing tasks based on a person's needs, like open communication, all these things, like especially in the tech community, is like very present. And I don't know, I actually have seen in other industries that it's not as present because it's kind of more rooted in old-fashioned traditions and stuff like that. But most cases, if you ask for this, like I said, by the ADA, like legally, your employer has to provide like some form of accommodation for you. So, I mean, we live in a country where we have the privilege to utilize that. So definitely utilize that. And yeah, like, so things that maybe aren't written down, you're like, or like sometimes like people, like verbal communication isn't enough. Maybe for me, I don't know. I don't want to discredit myself because I'm not like that far into the ADHD, but like some people with ADHD won't hear, like, or they'll hear somebody tell something to them and then it'll go out the other ear. So like there's
in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. And like for me, sometimes that happens, but I've gotten better at like processing that type of stuff. But here it's like, it says that you can even ask your boss to like write down these assignments to you and have them like in an email, in something. So it's like, it's so helpful, especially for me. It's like I can search in my email box if there was something that I needed to do, and it's just there. So, and then there's all these additional resources like the Job Accommodation Network, and I think it's a free consultation service. The Center of Psychiatric Rehabilitations, which is also another resource for this type of stuff. All of these things are on this link that will be on our website, but I don't know. I think it's really cool to see this because for me, a big reason for why I'm even doing like why I suggested that V and I do this theme of a podcast, and like why I am so vocal about my mental health state and all this stuff on my social media is because I think it's so important that there are so many people with disabilities that could be that have a hard time maintaining jobs and getting jobs because of their disability, but they're such intelligent people, and they can definitely thrive if they had the right resources. So that's where I feel like we can leave off in terms of this episode. It's just like, really though, if you need help, ask for the help.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's just like I know for a fact, like for me, I'm one of those people, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I'm one of those people that can talent my way out of certain situations where it's like I'm just good enough at certain things. Like what I'm good at, I'm very good at. But I have a lot of issues with time management, and without that like accommodation of like extended things, extended due dates, for me it'd be very, very difficult. Of course, I myself am working on building the time management skills, but because I'm able to have extended due dates, I was able to really like bust out and get like just all of my projects like all out the way that I want them to be. And I know that I'm like my work is worth a lot. And it took me a long time to realize that, because growing up I felt a little bit like there was something wrong with me. Why did I need help? You know?
Yeah, I get that.
So yeah. Anyway, that was the end of this episode. Do you have anything else to add? I know.
Yeah, no, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to check us out on Instagram at How's That Working For You, and check out our other show, The Cat and V Show. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Scooter podcast is a conversation between,
you guessed it,
Sarah
and Scooter. We are not experts on any of these topics.
Just hoping to spark something like an idea, conversation, or even a revelation.
Subjects will vary depending on our friends, family, and community.
Sometimes it will be what we want to talk about.
New episodes drop every week on all of your favorite podcast formats.
So pull up a chair and let's talk about stuff.